Hi everybody, Nick Blazier here with another position analysis video. We're looking at a 6-2 for white to play, bearing off against one checker on the roof. And this one is from my WBIF finals match against Georgios Lazaris again, or I don't remember if that's his last name. Close enough. He's the champ though, so we should remember it. But yeah, I had like a couple really interesting positions from that I kind of want to cover in some of these videos. Maybe there's a bit of quiz factor in looking at this. I don't know, but it's not one that I even considered over the board. So I thought it was really interesting and that there's a lot to learn in this position. But yeah, I guess check out my interviews that I've been doing on the channel, just a little bit of like news and updates. I'm doing those every Friday, and I've got those scheduled through the end of the month, and always finding more people to meet with. Let me know who you want me to interview, stuff like that. I've been having a lot of fun with that. My book's available on Amazon. You can go check out news about me on my webpage and keep up with me on Facebook. So yeah, check all that out. Oh, and I'm available for lessons too. I've been able to focus on that a little bit more, kind of in these like December and January months. I don't think I plan on traveling till February again, so it's nice. It's a good time for me to get started. So reach out if you're interested in working on your game. I should put like reviews on my site of what people think of that. I've got like some sample lessons and things like that on there, but I think people like working with me. So if you want to learn about the game, reach out. But yeah, so here's that 6-2, and without further ado, we will change to the answer here, which is that we should take two off to win Gammons. It's worth noting that it's a turned cube after the in post Crawford, and so it's always going to be worthwhile to win Gammons. This isn't like a pure Gammon Go score, so at a more Gammon Go score like 4 away, 1 away, this would be an even bigger mistake. We can see the magnitude there a little bit, 236, where at this score is 135, so almost doubles because of the value of those gammons. But still, the trade-off is good here. And what I wanted to do is go through a lot of positions that are kind of like references to this, for why I didn't even bother to think about it over the board, and kind of how we can know to in this spot. But my biggest problem in this position, the reason that I never thought about this was probably because I have one checker up and no pips outside on the board here, which typically, when we initially get to closeout, that means that there's basically no gammons available. So I'll show that in a reference here real quick. We'll kind of go through a couple of positions that I saved. So I put it on a hypothetical cube action with full closeout and perfect distribution against perfect distribution, one closed out. And we only have 2.35% gammons here. You might hear me in my commentary kind of go through a lot of these numbers and estimates too. But yeah, usually this comes up because typically when we have that few of gammons, we're gonna play a lot more safe and focus on the win, make sure we don't get hit and lose, which could happen against a closed board here. We'll get to that board strength thing in a little bit. But there's not a lot of gammons to be picked up by playing aggressive. So if we get something like a 6-4 might be a decent example that I used a lot here. Um, we're likely to play more safely, something that's going to give us even distribution on top. That tends to be our safest. We don't leave any doubles that will leave shots next roll, anything like that. Where the gammon play, and we can see it does win more gammons here too, is to take two checkers off, but it risks sixes and fives next roll. So this is like a very common bear off dilemma. Where are we focused on winning a gammon, or are we just playing for the win? Or do we have the gammon locked up if we're safe too? We can get into those kinds of scenarios. And so to figure out where we are in that, we needed some way to estimate how many gammons there are. And I just showed you the reference that with just the one up, we're around 2%, or between 2 and 3%, something like this. And the formula I've always been taught to use is, I think this is like a Rockwell formula, but with David Rockwell, Chicago guy. But so with 8 pips outside and a single checker up, we usually have around 10% gammons that we stand to win. That's one reference. And every 4 pips after that, we tend to have another 10% wins, or 10% Gammons. Sorry. So we can see here we're in like the 18% range with 12 pips outside now. If I bring another checker outside for another 4 pips, now we're closer to that 30%. And if I bring that checker another 4 pips back, now we're about 40%. If I bring it another 4 pips back, we're about 50%. And the formula works pretty well, right? So it's very handy to know kind of roughly where we are and whether we need to fight for our gammon or not. And so we can show how that impacts something like that 6-4 roll as well. If we look at that, so imagine we have these 12 pips outside. This is not that many gammons that we're fighting for to begin with. And so we only pick up another 4% gammons and going for it. But we do risk some losses in playing there. And so when we're down kind of with lower gammon chances in general, we tend to prefer the safer play. However, if we get back to 16 pips outside, now our gammon chances are getting higher, and playing for it is getting a little bit more important. And it also, I mean, the wins that our opponent picks up are maybe, I guess they're the same. You're going to work these. If you hit a shot, you get to work these around. So they're about the same. But yeah, this is a common theme in making decisions with these plays, that the amount, like when we're in this kind of like 30 to 70, or like, I don't know, somewhere in this like even money to win a gammon or close to it, then it starts to get more important to take some decisive stab at locking up that gammon, because there's a big payoff in that range. When we're really unlikely to win a gammon, we don't gain much by trying for it. And when we're really likely to win a gammon, we don't gain much by trying harder for it, right? So this is one way we can figure out how to make these plays, but we still haven't figured out how to like leave a shot necessarily. Those, that can come up. But yeah, it's also important to point out that along with the number of gammons and that we stand to win here with pips outside, another big feature is how strong the opponent's board is, because this is going to affect whether they're going to win the game or not after they get a hit. And we can see that in this 6-4 now, where maybe our gammons are only in the low teens, and we only pick up like 3%-ish more gammons by making a gammonish play and taking 2 off, with the only 8 pips outside. But when we get hit, we're not going to lose very often. We only pick up 0.1% wins by playing more aggressively. So we can watch out for our opponent's weaker board to make plays like this too. Now, one factor that I definitely didn't like hone in on in this position, that wasn't in my mind, was how weak our opponent's board is. So if we look at this original position here, I don't know what I would have guessed over the board, but the question a little bit is this closer to a closed out 6-point board where our opponent's going to win a lot when they hit a checker? Or is it closer to the 2-point board where they're almost never going to win when they hit? It's going to be very hard. And it turns out this isn't that different than a 2-point board in this scenario, since it's going to be impossible for our opponent to close out with all these buried checkers. Very unlikely they'll even make another point. And we're just so likely to enter. We're a favorite to enter every time we roll. If we can just hop in and race around, then we're doing really well, right? So I ran it first, just looking at that 6-4 play. You can see here, similar to the 2-point board, we give up 0.6% wins now, more than against the 2-point board, but not much more. Not the 3 or 4% that we were giving up against the closed board. So I would say this acts more like that 2-point board in a weak position. So we should be looking for aggressive gammon plays by default against such a weak board. So that's something I definitely didn't have in mind in this position. So we have a couple other ones here too, where, yeah. And so what I was trying to figure out though is with this one, as I rolled home, I ended up in a position like this. And what I was trying to figure out is, okay, maybe I should be making gammonish plays, but when am I with a single checker up and no pips outside? I have no real references before looking at this about how often I'm going to win a gammon in this position. Because I just know from early on, I'm going to be pretty safe because I don't win very many gammons. But somehow I got to 7 checkers off in this position, and certainly the gammons are climbing as we go. Um, so we can see here, once I got down to a 4 point board with 7 checkers off, this, by the way, happened because I rolled a 5-4 while I was out on the outside at some points and had to leave a shot, and then I took 2 checkers off, and I was happy afterward, after being missed. But yeah, so with 7 checkers off in this 4 point board, I don't know if this is like a great reference to remember, but maybe this will stick in my head, is that like when we've gotten this far, now we're up to 30%. And so there's like a real amount of gammons to be fought here, and we should look for probably more aggressive gammonish plays that might risk leaving shots later, and even more so if being hit can't win the game anyway, right? Um, so we make 30% gammons here, and I was curious how much this has to do. I mean, of course, there's not much like slime value when we come back, but if our opponent has a 6 point board, we actually are close to that 30% too. So it's nice to know that the gammons are pretty high in this position, regardless of board strength, pretty much too, which all checks out. And so I got curious too. Given the original position, I wonder if I could go for it in that original position with with a closed board here. And so you can think about this one for a second. We do definitely give up some wins now when we get hit, but we know we're fighting for gammons now too, right? It's probably going to be worth at least 10% in the gammon difference. And so I ran this one, and this one it's pretty close, but it's favored in playing safe now, and we can win all the way down to or lose all the way down to 88%. This one's pretty easy to calculate too, and it's valuable here. Is once we take these 2 checkers off, I mean, our wins are going to be for black are going to be pretty close to 11 shots times whatever the winning chances are when our opponent has 9 checkers off the board. So, do you know what those are? Right? Maybe you have references for it, but I know that the midpoint for about 50% winning chances for each is when we have 8 checkers off, and each checker is worth about 10% in winning chances. And so when our opponent hits here, they should be about 40% to win. And so if we're a little bit worse off than that, or if we have a little bit less than a third of that, sorry, a third of that is like 13%, so maybe 12% would be an easy guess to come by. And if we look at that 6-2, we can see that our opponent does have right around that 12% winning chances. It's probably a little more than what I estimated there because we might leave a shot again somehow. Um, so it's not like the only way they can win after taking 2 off. But yeah, that's a way that you can kind of compare that if you have a good guess at the wins. But it's also interesting to look at this too. Since it's close, I was curious as well if at a pure gammon go score, like 4 away, 1 away, well, then would we rip against the closed board? Yeah, by a very small margin. And that should be about what we expect with 12% difference in gammons and 11 something percent chances in wins. We get a little more gammons out of it. So, yeah, we need to, once we get down to these like 7 checkers off, I guess we need to really start thinking about making like even volunteering a shot because it's so hard to lose the game and so big, like we're starting to actually have some chances at winning gammons too. So yeah, this one really opened up my eyes. And someone actually caught it in the comments, so thank you for whoever did that. I mean, I would have caught it going through and been surprised by it too, but someone actually saw this over the board while I was playing and said, "What about that 6-2? Weren't you supposed to rip 2 for gammons?" Wow, I didn't think about it. I thought it was a really cool play and one that I hadn't seen before somehow. I hadn't come across it. Pretty unlikely to get this far with a single checker up. But now I know. Now I know to think about it. If we go all the way back to the original position, here we were. We can take 2 off now pretty clearly, right? Because if we were getting hit a third of the time and winning 40% before against the closed board, well, our opponent's going to have a heck of a time winning after they hit on this one. So if they roll a 3-6 and put us up here, and we have a hypothetical cube action here, we're still 95% to win this game. So we're giving up very little in winning chances to gain quite a bit in gammons when our opponent misses us. So this should be a pretty easy one to find going forward, I guess. So the 6-2 here with our opponent with 1 up. we get to rip 2 for Gammons. That's a lot of fun. A whole 12% extra that I could have gone for there. And I barely give up like a third of 5% or something like this, which is not very much in wins. So yeah, hope this helps you and maybe it'll come up over the board somewhere or something like that. I thought it was a really cool study. Enjoy, and I'll be back with more position analysis every week on Mondays and Thursdays. Talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.